The second day of preseason has come to an end and has once again exposed several problems for various teams, and overall it was a bit more chaotic than what we saw yesterday, a few more red flags, we've had more teams with problems, but it's still revealing information that the teams are trying to take advantage of. Before the first race of the season at the Australian Grand Prix, the session has already come to an end. The 11 cars are in the pits waiting to be able to take action on the track tomorrow. So, to not make this video any longer, it's time, ladies and gentlemen, to tell you what happened today. On the second day of testing at the Bahrain Formula 1 test in 2026. For the first time in 7 days out of all the days accumulated in the preseason, Aston Martin has managed to complete more than 70 laps. Today has been the most productive day for this team, where they managed to complete 98 laps, all driven by Fernando Alonso. This was extremely vital for the team. After the problems reported yesterday morning, Alonso went out to do several laps, gradually increasing his speed until he finally reached over 300 km per hour. In the afternoon, the activity was the same, trying to keep accumulating laps in different stints, although once again the car looked unstable, locking up at some points and nothing else. It's encouraging to see this, along with Stroll's comments about engine, balance and grip issues and being 4 seconds off the lead. Still, Aston Martin is making an effort today. They can boast that they've managed to complete many more laps than they did in the previous days when they took part in preseason testing. They can relax after a productive day, and now it's a question of whether things will stay the same or improve tomorrow. Well, they still have a lot of work to do with both the car and the power unit. After missing most of yesterday's session, Racing Bulls managed to make up for lost time with another day of very high mileage. Lawson and Lindblad shared the car in today's session, and in the morning it was Lawson's turn, who had the task of making up for the time lost yesterday. His stint involved a lot of work with the soft tire and short runs, managing to complete 50 laps, before handing over to Lindblad in the afternoon, who, for his part, followed his own program as could be seen in the live timing. Because remember, only the last hour of this preseason is broadcast. He focused more on long runs and worked with the hard and soft tires. He managed to complete 83 laps and set the team's best time with a 1-37.470. It doesn't seem like they were testing for speed, it looks like they focused on gathering as much information as possible. But the recovery of the time lost yesterday has been extremely interesting, so Racing Bulls had a good day. In fact, they perfectly fulfilled the purpose of gathering information that Red Bull couldn't do today. I'll explain why in a moment. Second day of testing for Williams and their second time surpassing 100 laps, another highly productive session for the team. As usual, the two drivers split the day, and in the morning, Albon was in charge of driving the car. He worked a lot on short stints, mainly with medium and soft tires. In the afternoon, he handed over to Carlos Sainz, who continued with the same goal of adding more laps for the team. Between him and Alex Albon, they managed to complete 131 laps. And the best time of the day for this team ended up being set by Alex Albon with a time of 1-37.229. On the positive side, Williams is running without any apparent issues that would cut their mileage, and they keep adding laps, as I always mention to you. This translates into good information that will help the car be in the best possible shape for the debut of these technical regulations at the Australian Grand Prix in just a few weeks. For the second day in a row, Cadillac manages to surpass 100 laps completed. It was a productive session, although not without its problems. In the morning, Checo Perez was in charge of driving the car, one of the first to hit the track, until he came to a stop, causing a red flag due to a software problem. Although they quickly managed to get the car back on track, and after a few installation laps, the Mexican was able to continue with the short-run program, managing to complete a total of 42 laps himself. In the afternoon, it was Valtteri Bottas's turn, who was in charge of doing longer runs, managing to complete 67 laps. However, he did cause a brief red flag when the rear-view mirror of his single-seater flew off onto the track. But aside from that, he was able to enjoy a session without major issues, and in the end, he decided to go for a slightly faster lap, managing to set the team's best time of the day with a record of 1-36.824. So Cadillac once again had a high mileage session, which is vital for them. Wrapping up a positive day, hopefully tomorrow they can finish in the same way or even better than they did today. Alpine was more productive today than yesterday, but still hasn't had a trouble-free session. Today, the one in charge of driving the car the whole time was Pierre Gasly, who was seen very active with the hard tire in the morning. I suppose it was to make up for lost time. And just in the morning, he managed to complete 61 laps in total, but in the afternoon, while he was carrying out one of his different programs, he ended up stopped in the runoff area of the main straight when he had accumulated 97 laps. This caused another red flag today. And after this, the car was returned to the garage and did not go back out for the rest of the session. So Gasly ended the day prematurely, with 97 laps completed and a best time of 1-36.723, which allows him to be the 7th fastest of the day for the second session in a row. Problems have limited the mileage for this team as well. All that's left is to work so that tomorrow's final session is more productive and these issues don't show up again. They should cut off the flow of information from the French team. Audi once again surpasses 100 laps, which is very necessary for them, and they managed to have another very productive day. In the morning, Hülkenberg was in charge of driving the car, and during his stint, he managed to complete 47 laps, although many of them were installation laps. You know those laps where you just go in and out of the pits without setting any times? After that, Hülkenberg tested the car in short stints before handing the car over to Bortoleto. In the afternoon, the Brazilian seemed a bit unstable with the car, had some braking overshoots and went off track a few times, but nothing that really cut his mileage short. He managed to complete 67 laps, giving Audi a total of 114 laps recorded today. And Bortoleto leaves with the 6th fastest time of the session, having set a lap of 1-36.670. So, regardless of the car looking difficult to handle on track, as long as they keep gathering data, things will be positive for the German team. Yesterday, we praised how Red Bull consistently drew attention with their speed and efficient electric power. However, today things weren't as positive. Haas was in charge of driving the car throughout Thursday, but he missed the morning session because Red Bull found a hydraulic problem that took them all morning to fix. In the afternoon, with the problem solved, Haas spent a lot of time on the track trying to follow Red Bull's plan to make up for all the time they had lost. He managed to complete 87 laps throughout the day with a time of 1:36.561, which gave him the 5th best time on Thursday. Although they faced a problem, they made up for lost time and added valuable miles. However, today Red Bull encountered its first major issue after Haas's accident in Barcelona. But at least that hasn't stopped them completely, like it has other teams, and they've still been able to complete many laps to gather information. Mercedes, which was the main benchmark after Barcelona, has once again experienced problems that abruptly cut the team's mileage. Yesterday it was a suspension problem, today it was a power unit issue. And the two victims who have suffered these failures are Andrea Kim and Antonelli, since today he was in charge of driving the car in the morning session. But he was only able to do 3 laps before the team detected the power unit problem, and they had to immediately go and change it, losing practically the entire morning. Russell drove the car in the afternoon, but he wasn't able to do many laps either, managing to complete just about 54 laps in various programs. They finished the day with only 57 laps and Russell's best time of 1:35.466, which puts him with the 4th fastest time of the day. Second consecutive session with problems and short mileage for Mercedes, so the Germans can only aim for a clean Friday and rely on the extra information that the rest of their customer teams have gathered in a second day of preseason testing. For them, it has looked extremely problematic. Haas continues to surprise by being able to do a lot of laps without showing any apparent serious problems. Yesterday, Esteban Ocon had the car to himself. Today, Oliver Bergman took his turn, completing 130 laps solo. Testing different plans for the team with many long runs, but where? What stands out is that once again, as has been the trend practically since Spain, they managed to rack up a lot of laps and also don't have any serious problems that limit their time on track. The only major problem they had was on the second day they took part in the Barcelona tests. But other than that, the sessions have been extremely clean and they've always gone over 100 laps. Bergman finishes with the 3rd fastest time of the day with a time of 1:35.394. And they might just be the surprise of the midfield if they keep running this solid and keep gathering a lot of information in the process. McLaren is once again the one showing strength among the Mercedes-powered teams, and they've had another extremely productive session. Today the car was driven by Lando Norris, and yesterday the team said they were still trying to understand how the car worked. And did they focus on that? But today Norris has been seen working really hard. In long runs since the morning, which continued into the afternoon, they managed to complete 149 laps, being the only team that did the most laps today. And the car has once again looked reliable, consistent, and again without any serious problems that limited the mileage. Norris finishes with the 2nd best time of the day with a record of 1:34.782. But it must be mentioned that, as I have said many times, the times are not useful as a reference. But the rest of the team set their best time with the soft tire, that is the C3, and they did it with the C2 tire, which is the medium. I'm just mentioning it as a small detail. This, as I said, doesn't mean much, but what is undeniable is that McLaren is still doing very well, and we'll see if tomorrow they manage to have a similar Friday. but the consistency they've been showing these days is definitely extremely positive. Ferrari hasn't drawn much attention this preseason, oddly enough, since they're the only team without major reliability problems. And once again, today they've enjoyed a productive day. Leclerc was in charge of driving the car all day. And again, just like McLaren, there was a lot of work on long runs. He led the morning session, and in the afternoon the work was pretty much the same, managing to complete 139 laps throughout the session. And together with the laps completed by Cadillac and Haas, they give their power unit 183 laps of understanding, which has looked quite solid since the Barcelona preseason. In addition, they finished with the best time of the preseason day with a record of 1:34.273 set on the soft tire. Clearly, it's too soon to call Ferrari the benchmark, but it's still striking that they keep running without issues and have been the only team that hasn't experienced a serious reliability problem. Tomorrow it will be Lewis Hamilton's turn to take the wheel, but at least these days, with your information, Ferrari has looked very good. But ladies and gentlemen, with this we finish the second day of testing at the Bahrain Formula 1 test in 2026. We still have tomorrow's session left before having a week off to go straight into the third and final day of preseason testing. I simply invite you to leave me a comment. Who did you like today? Which team did you see as the most solid, and which team did you see having the most problems? Leave all your opinions in the comments section, and I'll see you tomorrow for the last recap of this second round of Formula 1 preseason testing.